Blog Talk Radio.
It'll be fantastic. It'll blow you away. Welcome to another edition, brand new edition of NBA Unplugged, brought to you by theprobasketballtalk.com. We have a huge Atlantic Division preview for you. We're winding down to the start of the NBA season. It's closer than you think, folks. And of course, as always, I'm James Bucklin, sort of new to the show, but I'm here full-time now. And with me is the creator of the Pro Basketball Talk,
Jacob Noble. How are we doing today, everybody? We got a fantastic show. We're going to have breakdown basically every team in the Atlantic Division outside of the non-playoff teams. So I think we can guess which Raptor team that's going to be.
Yep, one that used to wear purple jerseys with Raptors on them.
If they did that, they might be in the playoffs again. But we have a fantastic show. We're going to have Jessica Camerato from Comcast Sportsnet in Boston join us to break down the Celtics.
That's true. Huge guest. She obviously knows her stuff. She's with the team all the time. We also have to cover the New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets. Excuse me, I almost said the wrong thing. We've got Moke Hamilton from Sheridan Hoops to speak with us today.
Yeah, he's going to break down the Knicks and the Nets and everything New York related with us. And then lastly, we're going to have a little comedy and humor on the show.
I hope so.
Barstool Sports Philadelphia is going to be joining us. Mo, we can't give out his last name. That's confidential because he's got a lot of enemies out there with his posts. So you can understand the content with that.
Yeah, Barstool Sports pretty much rules the blog world at this point. El Presidente really started it all, and it's really become the biggest thing in the blog world, not even just sports, too, just basically everything they cover. So, yeah, Maurice from Barstool Philly. I'm pretty excited about that one.
So, we got a few minutes. Jessica's going to be joining us in about, 10 minutes.
We can talk Raptors.
We have a clean Gary slate to discuss this Raptors team. And let's be honest, if anybody thinks they're going to make the playoffs, you're fooling yourself. This isn't the NFL where, everybody has hope that their team might make it.
I think Linus Claza truly believes.
Lennis might believe. He believes in a lot of things. He believes that he's underpaid. I'd agree with that.
I don't know about that. $4.6 million seems like a lot for Linus, although if you listen to Bozos of basketball, you'll know he's had some monster games for the Nugs when George Karl didn't have anybody else to play 45 minutes in an overtime game.
Well, Linus will crash the boards and get dirty. He's a guy you don't want to play against on the basketball court. But to me, it's all going to rest on Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and obviously Andreas Bargnani. They're eventually going to move Jose Calderon. They have to. They got to clear space for Kyle Lowry.
Kyle's got to do his thing.
They got a lot of role players on here. They need to find a star, and maybe they can package up some of these guys and send them to New York and grab an Amari-type guy. If that doesn't work out, but we'll get to that later. I don't want to blow our load too early here.
Yeah, let's not start talking about the Knicks and sort of step on Moke Hamilton's shoes. I'm sure he has a lot better information than we do about them. That's why we have him on the show.
Exactly. So last year, in the Eastern Conference, the Atlantic Division, the Celtics took it with a 3-game lead over the New York. There's 2 New York teams now. The New York Knicks. Philadelphia finished with the 8th seed, and Toronto and New Jersey both missed the playoffs. But looking at the roster for the Brooklyn Nets, it looks like they're going to be making it. We got to cross that New Jersey off. NBA.com, fix your stuff. That should be Brooklyn.
BRK, I believe, is the...
Oh, Burger King.
Yes. Burger King will be the abbreviation that they go by this year. But, it was the shortened season, of course, as we all know. Boston came out on top. I think it's going to be more closely competitive this year. And I'm not sure it's the Knicks that's going to – I think it might be the Brooklyn Nets that give them the most trouble.
They could. They have a lot of firepower in their guards with Joe Johnson and Deron Williams. I think there's going to be 4 playoff teams out of this division. I just don't see how the 76ers, Celtics, Knicks, and Nets don't make the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, 3 is guaranteed. One might, go down to injury. Say if Andrew Bynum gets hurt, you can see the Sixers,
which could obviously happen at any time, as we all know.
Yeah. So if he's not doing his zen on the bench, he might get hurt. Yeah. So I could see that happening. But for the most part, I like 4 teams coming out.
Yeah, I don't like the Toronto Raptors. And
No.
There's not really much you can say good about him, besides that they have Kyle Lowry. I think that's a great pickup. He's a guy who can create for other players, not that he has many people to pass to on the team.
They're very young. They're very young, but you got to ask yourself, do you see a superstar being born on this roster?
That's the problem. They would need to be bad enough and lucky enough to get the first pick in a draft in order to get that superstar caliber player. What American is going to want to move up to Canada to play there? That's why you see so many foreign players playing on the Raptors, because U.S. guys who live there don't want to go up to Canada. They want to stay in the States, and I don't blame them.
No, I mean, I love Toronto. We've had fantastic times in Toronto together.
I've spent a lot of good time in Canada, yeah.
We love Toronto.
We love the Argonauts. The Argonaut games?
I just want to find that bar, forget about it. But that's a story for another day. You have to come out to the bar after tonight with us. And you'll hear all
find
about
us in the city of Boston. We'll tell you about a bar called Forget About It that we never found.
But we did find.
We digress.
But, I mean, you can go up to Toronto and avoid taxes if you want, a little less taxes. Their currency's doing okay, but we're not here to talk economics.
A little less rock and roll, yeah.
A little less rock and roll, yeah. And don't go to Wayne Gretzky's restaurant. Highly overpriced and not that good of a food. But so that basically sums down the Toronto Raptors for us. I look at this list and, you just hope that they can make a trade and pick up somebody, but one player is not going to be enough.
No, and that's always been the problem for the Toronto Raptors. They've never been. Did they ever make the playoffs even with those teams with Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady?
A couple times.
But it was never obviously.
Yeah, I mean they had the famous duo with Vince versus AI when they both scored over 40 or something.
Yeah.
And the Sixers ended up going on to the finals that year. I believe it was 0-1.
Imagine that if you were a big time Raptor fan, that being the most important time in your fan career.
Well, I think the most important time in their fan career was when Gerald Green had those monstrous dunks on them in the stadium.
No, but imagine that. You're a Toronto Raptors fan. You're sitting at home. You're watching the Raptors every single night.
Sorry,
night
Mitch.
in and night out. Yeah, sorry for Mitch, who writes for the site, who's probably a big Toronto fan. He lives in that city. And your best memories are coming from a guy named Vince Carter.
Who dogged it.
Yeah, he's the one who, if you were to build a statue for someone on the Toronto Raptors right now, it would probably be Vince Carter for his 2000 dunk contest alone.
Well, jumping over that French guy was pretty neat.
True.
But I got two other heroes of mine before Jess joins us in a few minutes.
Yeah, let's talk Raptors history.
We got some Raptors history. One of my favorite Raptors of all time is Muddy Mouse, Damon Stoudemire.
Yeah.
You love so I mean, then that won't cost you a lot. His statue will be small. It'll be good. Save some money.
Former Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year. There you go. And then he also got Camby too. I believe Camby started his career up there.
That's true. Marcus Camby did spend some good time in Toronto, but still, your best memories are from Vince Carter. How sad must that be?
And never realizing what Tracy McGrady could have been. Because you had him, but you didn't know what you had.
Exactly. He had to wait to get to with Doc Rivers in Orlando before he really turned into T-Mac, as they called him.
It would have been great if he stayed there. They could have made the name T-Rex or something,
Ooh, I'm sure that happened. There's no way that didn't happen, calling him T-Rex.
But long story short, we tried getting into the stadium when we were up there, and it was closed. They didn't let us in. We tried buying some Raptor jerseys. Whose jerseys were we trying to buy at the time?
God knows.
Was it Calderon?
It must have been. I don't know. What year was that?
2007.
Jeez. Wow. I can't even think of who it could have even been. There's a lot of turnover. That's a big thing with their franchise, too. So much turnover. When guys come in, they don't want to stay there.
No.
As soon as their contract's up, I'm out of here. And I don't blame them.
But, we haven't talked about Landry Fields yet.
Yeah.
Do we want to?
I think we talked about him last week. They probably overpaid for him, But,
I like a guy like Ed Davis. He's nice. I saw him in a couple of preseason games last year in a shortened lockout season. He's a 6'10" center, but, you look at him and is he going to be better than a Greg Monroe type guy? And, you really just got to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, is this a roster that can get me a superstar? Or is this a roster that, is going to win 30 to 40 games?
Listen, Steve Nash has had times when he was a free agent. If he's not going up to Canada to play for the Toronto Raptors, nobody's doing it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there.
All right, let's switch focuses here. That's too much Raptor talk.
Well, we got to get out of the way.
Yeah, we did have to get it out of the way. That's me crumbling up my notes on the Toronto Raptors. We're done with it. I missed the trash barrel.
No, it went in.
Oh, there you go. Woo! Oh, there's two trash barrels. That's why I got lucky.
One's recycling, one's trash.
Let's talk about the big picture here of the Atlantic Division. Do you see the Celtics repeating here, or do you see Philly or Brooklyn or New York taking that Atlantic Division crown and getting that spot in the playoffs?
The thing that we've learned over the past couple of years with this Celtics team, since they have won the division in the past few years, is it's not about winning the division for them. That's not their goal. So they look at matchups. They look at where can we succeed in the playoffs the best. And I think they've been very good at that in the past couple of years, knowing the health reasons.
It's the old Popovich theory. Take your time in the regular season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. If you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. The most important thing is all of our guys are healthy and know their role.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can ask for. But can I see the Nets or the Knicks or the Sixers taking the division? Yeah, I do, especially with the injuries that the Celtics are facing with one of their best defenders in Avery Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
He was the spark plug that made them go last year. We'll talk to Jessica about that and get an update on his status. And then you look at the Nets, and the Nets got a lot of firepower. You know, they got a $80 million payroll. Sorry, $84 million payroll. They got, you know, all-stars around. You know, Gerald Wallace has made an all-star, I believe, with the Bobcats way back in the day.
Joe Johnson.
Darren
Williams,
6-7-time all-star. Deron Williams is a 6-7-time all-star.
Brooke Lopez is being paid as an all-star. I don't think he's ever made an all-star team.
Well, Humphries is getting paid like an all-star, too, for 2 years, $22 million. So,
sure thing.
You know, they got a ton of stuff. And without further ado, we'd like to welcome Jessica Camerato with us, everybody. She's from Comcast Sportsnet. Her Twitter handle is jcamerato, NBA, and she also speaks Spanish for you Spanish lovers out there. How you doing today, Jessica?
Hey, good. How are you?
We're fantastic. You're here with Jacob and JJ, and I'll let JJ kick off the questions for you.
Sure thing. I'm a little disappointed. I thought after you gave that Spanish intro that you'd be hitting us with some Spanish greetings as well.
Oh, man, you guys ask a lot, don't you?
Well, we keep asking until you say no, so if you just said no, we go on our way.
Yeah. Well, let's start, Jessica, with the biggest acquisition for the Celtics in this offseason, and that would be, in my opinion, Jason Terry. Do you think that they're better off with the combination of Terry and Courtney Lee, and then when Avery Bradley comes back, him as well, than they were with the combination of Bradley starting and Ray Allen coming off the bench when he was here, and that was the case?
What's so important about Jason Terry is that he's a true sixth man and really embraces that role. For so long, I mean, remember they tried to have Big Baby do the whole six-man thing, and he was like, no, I'm going to go play for a contract now, so that's really not going to work. Why Jason Terry works in that role is because they haven't had that, and when you can have that stability of knowing who is going to be coming off your bench versus who is going to be starting every night, which they didn't have last season with Ray Allen and Avery Bradley, that allows your second unit to gel as a second unit. That allows your starting five to gel as a starting five, especially with new faces coming in. So being that he is a true six-man, it gives them a lot of stability. And when you have somebody that embraces that role and is like, it's okay, I don't need to start every game, that just gives a vibe of unselfishness and a team-first mentality that can only help a locker room.
Mm-hmm. That's the kind of guy that Kevin Garnett loves to have around, and I think that's why some of these veterans who understand where they are in their careers flock to the Celtics because of that, you know, that team atmosphere, and everyone's going to do everything for each other. Ubuntu. Speaking of Kevin Garnett, talk to us a little bit about what the signing of Kevin Garnett means to the team, the players on there currently like Rondo, the younger guys, as well as the near future for the Celtics and the organization.
In the immediate season, it's so important to have him there with Rondo. Rondo, we know how he can be sometimes. He's a very strong personality, and KG reins that in. And I think it's really important for him to have that older presence on the team. Rondo's been in the league for, a few years now. He's no longer that new guy, but he's still young, and he's still developing in terms of leadership. So having Kevin Garnett there is so important because Rondo listens to him. And then in terms of the upcoming seasons, when you have these veterans like Paul Pierce, like Jason Terry, like Kevin Garnett, and then you have guys around the age of, Brandon Bass and Jeff Green, they're going to help transition them into that veteran leader role once they leave. So it's almost like once they leave and you kind of shift the veteran leadership on the team once you lose Pierce and once you lose KG.
It's like the old-time Celtics. They had their veterans, they had their young guys, and they sort of passed the reins on. I like it.
It's good.
Now, you mentioned Jeff Green. What's the latest on him and the latest on Chris Wilcox in their heart-related injuries? Are they going to be good for the start of camp?
They're both expected to be good for the start of camp. And I think, they're both incredibly lucky that whatever they had going on was caught. They were extremely appreciative to the Celtics. I thought it just said a lot that both of them came to the playoff games. There was one game in the playoffs the Celtics were just losing terribly. And they sat in their seats and watched the entire game. And with Jeff Green's kind of rocky transition to the Celtics after the Thunder, he didn't really seem to fit right away. Just him being around the team, just physically being around them, will help a lot in terms of just gelling, which he didn't really do very well immediately after the trade 2 seasons ago.
I agree with you, Jess, and that's why I'm giving him a pass. I know everyone's eating up his contract, and everyone's calling Danny Ainge yeah, exactly, the dumbest general manager in the world for that contract. And I'm willing to give a 26-year-old 6'9" wing defender, and we've seen what he could do in the fast break offense. I'm willing to give him a pass until he has a full year with this team. It just seems like he's had the worst situation since he's come over here. Let's shift gears a little bit to the young guys. What role do you see the rookies playing on this team that is still competing for an NBA title?
I see these rookies playing more of a role than rookies last year. It was just unfortunate with Jawan Johnson and E'Twaun Moore. It just, lockout, no practice, no training camp. They're really at a disadvantage. But Fab and Jared, they're different kinds of players. Jared is playing with a chip on his shoulder. He didn't want to drop to the 21st pick. I've gotten a chance to talk to him a lot this offseason. He will have a lot to learn. And so will Fab. Fab is going to be a project, but they both understand that they need to accept their roles and have all ears and eyes open to the veterans. And both are excited to learn from the older guys. So that's very important.
Yeah, I'm excited because you got these, Jared Sullinger to me is going to be very interesting to watch. I think he's going to learn a lot with Kevin there. And I agree with you. I think you're going to see, 10, 15 minutes spurts there and not see, Jawan didn't see the light of day for, half a season. And it's like, it confused me. My next question for you is about the young guard who's one of my favorite players on this team, Avery Bradley. And I absolutely adore this guy. Yeah, stuck up for Rondo when he asked Doc to start him. And I liked when he came out of college because, as you know, Doc said he's one of those few college players who can play NBA defense right away. And, you don't hear that often. And last year we saw how great he was for this team, and he allowed everybody else to do what they had to do. And the most surprising thing about him was his scoring. He was making, the corner threes. He was making fantastic cuts for the basket.
Back cuts, yeah.
Yeah, so my question to you, Jessica, is how much of an impact will Bradley's absence be in the first few months of the season, and who do you think starts in his place?
I think you give the starting job to Courtney Lee. Courtney Lee, it's no issue making him the starting two guard. That's, it's not like you lose a lot with him in your starting lineup. It'll be very interesting to see what happens when Avery does come back, though, because with that shoulder injury and the surgery, they're not going to take any risks with him. That's who you need ready for the playoffs. But Courtney is a very, very capable player. There's a reason why he was so highly touted as a free agent. So I think you're going to have a good problem on your hand of trying to figure out how to fit all that backcourt time playing him. But with Avery, I'm excited to watch him this season. I think we're going to see a different side of Avery Bradley. We're not going to see that shy, quiet guy. I hosted the Celtics Summer Soiree a few weeks ago, and it was a panel with Avery, Courtney Lee, Deontay Christmas, and Chris Joseph. And Avery, who was always that shy, reserved, polite guy, was like the star of the show. He was so much personality and sharing stories, and you could tell, even though he was the youngest player among all those guys, you could tell he had been around the Celtics. You could tell he's just not the new kid on the block anymore. And I think we're really going to see him, a fully comfortable Avery Bradley, once he comes back from the injury. It's going to be a different player, and it's going to be exciting to watch.
And that's what you want to see is improvement in all areas, on the court and off. Are there any players on this Celtics roster that the average fan probably wouldn't know about and could be a big surprise, play a big role on the team this year? You've got some of these young guys, like you mentioned, Christmas, and, there's a couple like Fab Melo, who we don't exactly know what we're going to get from this year. Who do you expect to be the biggest surprise coming off that roster?
Oh, biggest surprise. I think that, like I said before, I think Courtney Lee is going to pleasantly surprise people. So much has been made about Jason Terry, because he's been in the league for so long and the championships and everything. But Courtney has, he started off on a playoff contender, Orlando Magic, got dealt to the New Jersey Nets, where they were absolutely horrible, got on the Houston Rockets, where kind of just a mediocre team, and he is really looking forward to winning. He has been mentored by Keon Dooling, which if you're going to be mentored by someone, be mentored by Keon. That's not a bad thing. So a lot of people I feel like they don't know a lot about Courtney and his work ethic and just his humbleness and his desire to win, because he's been in the Western Conference for a few years. So while some of the newer guys and even Jeff Green coming back have gotten more of the hype, I feel like, around their signings, I think that Courtney will pleasantly surprise people. And also, he's not going to make a big impact on the team, but I'm intrigued to see Chris Joseph's development. The coaches were very pleased with him at Summer League. They thought he was a steal. Ty Lue was surprised that he wasn't drafted in the first round. So there isn't going to be a ton of opportunity for him on the Celtics, but I think that he will play above his draft pick.
Now, this is an interesting season, Jess, because last year they were one quarter away from going back to the NBA Finals. And I think all of us here can agree that they have a better roster going into next year. However, there still seems to be that a lot of those other top-tier teams have gotten better. If you were to address Celtic Nation and give them expectations of this upcoming season, what would you tell them?
Well, I kind of have to go back to last season first to address this season. I know there was, yes, they were one quarter away from going to the NBA Finals, but that's not the same Miami Heat team. That wasn't against the same Miami Heat team that actually went to the Finals. I do believe that if Chris Bosh had been healthy that entire series, I don't think the Celtics would have made it that far. Once he came back, the series changed, and they didn't have an answer to stop them. So if Bosh had been healthy the whole time, we could be sitting there saying the Celtics got eliminated in Game 5 or the Celtics got eliminated in Game 6, and maybe they wouldn't have been as close because that's the Miami Heat team that you're going up against next season with Chris Bosh. And you're going up against the Miami Heat team now with Ray Allen. So I definitely think the Celtics are in a much better position than they were last year. I love the improvements they made to their bench. Just very good quality character guys that know their role and know how to get it done. But again, like you said, the other teams have gotten better as well. I think the Miami Heat are still the team you have to go through. You don't have to worry about the Orlando Magic anymore. Not like you really had to worry about them that much in the past because they kind of self-destructed plenty of times. But I'm interested to see what happens with the Philadelphia 76ers and the Nets. They're kind of like the unknown right now because they have so many new big pieces.
Look at you just plugging away the rest of the teams about the cover for us. You're just doing our job for us, making this easy.
I know. We might as well not even have Moke Hamilton and Maurice from Barstool Philly on later.
No, I'll stop. I'll just stop.
And, yeah, I like how you mentioned Chris Bosh coming back in that series. He might as well have been Ray Allen on that team the way he was shooting the ball that day.
Like I said, technically they were one quarter away from winning, but they won plenty of games against a different Heat team that went on.
Now, on a more serious note, Jess, how can we be completely sure that the Celtics signed Jason Collins and not Jaren Collins?
Wait, they're supposed to see on media day which guy shows up.
Right, but they look exactly the same. How are you supposed to know which one it is?
Well, maybe I'll ask for a birth certificate.
I think that's a good plan. At least a picture license.
Fingerprints.
Well, the way the world's working these days, you almost need to carry a birth certificate on you. No one believes who you are these days, so got a twin walking around.
I believe Jason once had cornrows and not Jaren. So if you see cornrows, I would assume Jason, but it's still dangerous.
Cornrows are just, cornrows are dangerous. It's a dangerous look.
We'll keep it on the lighthearted subjects real quick. This is a question I've been brewing on Twitter recently, and you know Rondo's personality more than anybody. He's one competitive SOB, and with all the situation with Ray Allen leaving town, I want you to predict Rondo's stat line on opening night against the Miami Heat in Miami with Ray Allen looking across on his smear campaign on his way out of here, where Doc had to, put a little fire extinguisher on that to calm it down and say, it was mostly me, it wasn't Rondo. What do you think Rondo's going to do opening night? I
predict a double-double. I think he goes for the triple-double, and I think Ray Allen huddles up his new teammates and says, this is how we're going to get it done, and this is how we're going to stop him. I think this is going to be, even if Ray Allen is not defending him, Ray Allen is going to have a lot to do with how Rondo is defended. They're both so competitive, and Rondo wants to beat Ray, and Ray wants to beat Rondo.
We remember that footage of the horse game. I think Red's Army put it up where Rondo was celebrating Ray Allen missing a free throw, with his shirt off and the ball in the air and screaming out the top of his lungs.
Yeah, they're both very smart players, and they know each other's game very well, and both will be offering up tips. Rondo will be telling the new Celtics how to defend Ray, and Ray will be mapping out game plans for the Heat.
Do you think it's just a competitive thing, or do you think there's a little personality clash between those two?
They're completely different personality-wise. I mean, you have to look at Rondo is this person with this amazing natural ability. You know, he'll sit there, just sometimes sit there just in his jeans before a game. There was one night, just had his jeans on. Ray's been warming up, you know, for 24 hours at that point. Just, Ray is very methodical, and Rondo, they just have different approaches to the game, and they're both very strong personalities. So, yeah, you're bound to have personality differences and clashes, but what I will always say about this situation is they never let it affect them on the court. And when they were, you know, like you're saying, 1 quarter away from the NBA Finals, that wasn't affecting them.
No, you're absolutely right there, and I'm one of the biggest Rondo supporters out there, and I always ask people questions when they say just, things that they say because it's been said around the league, like, Rondo's a bad apple, he's got a bad attitude, I wouldn't want to play with that guy, and I always ask them, what are the stories you hear about Rondo? Is he yelling because he wasn't the first one on the bus and didn't get the back seat? Is he upset that, his locker's not here in the locker room? Or is he upset that, someone made a mistake or should have done something else to make a basket to win a game? Or, is he arguing in the film room because he thinks you could win this way and someone else might think that way? And that's what I always try to bring light to people. He has that competitiveness. He has that attitude because he's competitive and wants to win, not because he, wants the most money at anybody. They all do. But that's how I look at Rondo. Now, I got another less serious question for you. I'm not going to be sarcastic as JJ is.
Whoa.
So we have all these, salaries out here, and one thing I just noticed while we were sitting here is Kevin Garnett's going to make less money than 4 players on the Brooklyn Nets next year. Now, what do you think about that? Do you think you just take the hometown discount, or do you see the Nets, with their $90 million payroll being a average playoff team?
Which 4 is he making less than?
Chris Humphries, Brook Lopez, Duran, and Joe Johnson.
Can we just, not talk about this Joe Johnson contract? Because that is, the most ridiculous
we probably should. Him and Rashad Lewis are the last 2 people to ever become quarter of a billionaires for being average basketball players.
We won't even go there with that one. It's a completely different situation. Those guys aren't at the point in his career where Kevin Garnett is. We don't know how many minutes a game KG can play. We don't know how many games he's going to play this season. So he's just at a different point. And when you're on the Celtics, just the way these guys are all taking pay cuts and balancing salaries, and he's at a different point in his career. Maybe 10 years ago he wouldn't have taken the salary that he did, and he would have wanted more money like some of these other guys are getting. But KG, that report came out with the players that have made the most money over their careers. Like, he's good.
He's number one.
He's
number one all time in
all
earned.
True.
And
he
when
surpassed
you have a team
Shaquille O'Neal. Now, I feel very guilty if we didn't discuss this one player who is the Boston Celtic in my era, our era, where we're all the same age here basically, is Paul Pierce. Talk to us a little bit about his health. And I know he had about 40 injuries. He had the Tom Brady injury report going on all season last year, where basically everything was hurting at all times. But he still is being Paul Pierce, and we know how tough he is with the stabbings, chipping a tooth on the floor. He plays it and gives it all. Talk to us a little bit about his health coming into this season.
Well, Doc Rivers talked about this at Las Vegas Summer League, and he said the biggest issue with Paul is that all the injuries that Paul Pierce had, you need rest to get better. That's really it. I mean, it's not super complicated. He needed rest. He needed rest at the end of the season with his knee. And there was literally no opportunity for rest last season, not when you're fighting for a championship and you're the team captain like that and you're one of the team's biggest scorers. So he's taken the time. We've seen him tweeting all over this summer with relaxing. He's on the beach. He's with his family. Good. That's what the Celtics want him to do. Take the time off. Don't go too crazy here, and his injuries are getting better. So managing minutes will be important. They've been important since the Big Three era. That's something that Doc has had a challenge with of managing, because so many times you deal with injuries on the backup players, or the backup players haven't been as reliable. But I think this year they have a bench in place that is a lot more dependable than in years past, and those minutes will be able to go down without the offense and defense completely falling apart.
I agree 100%. Doc's one of the best at managing minutes outside of Greg Popovich, and before that, Phil Jackson. And we saw LeBron get run down 2 NBA Finals ago, where he was playing 40-something minutes a game, and and everyone had the whole fourth quarter theory that he just choked. No, the guy's tired. He's a human being. And I think Doc has always done barely a human being. Doc Rivers has done a fantastic job with that, and he's done it with Kevin, kept him at the 30-minute mark, the same thing Pop does with Duncan, and I expect to see Paul Pierce be in the 30 to 35 range going forward, at least to start the season, especially as you point out, Jess. I mean, they have wing defenders for the first time in a long time, at least a handful of them where you could mix and match and see what you got.
Yeah, I was surprised to see Paul Pierce was actually in the top 10 guys. If you take out all of the minutes that were played in the shortened season and also add on the Olympics, he was one of the top 10-minute guys in the entire NBA. That's U.S. and other countries.
Yep.
He plays so much, and it's going to come down to also Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett accepting that they aren't going to play or that they shouldn't be playing as many minutes as they have. Doc can say, I need you to play less minutes, and these guys are going to be like, no, I want to play. They want to be on the court so badly. At some point, they themselves have to accept scaling back for the longevity of their career.
Yeah, and that's certainly a big factor for them at this point in their career is longevity and how long they're willing to go. And now, Jess, we have one more for you, and let me preface it by saying you don't have to answer this question.
Okay.
That's usually not a good start.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're a fine young lady who's covering the Celtics on a regular basis. You're around the team. Have you ever been hit on by a player?
Oh, my gosh. Really? We're going to go there? How about you ask me another question that has to do more with not being a lady but being a reporter?
I was just hoping to get a nice, lighthearted story out of it.
We're going to keep these questions gender neutral. How about that?
Fair enough. Well,
that's all I got for you, Jess. You've been great. You gave us 20-some-odd minutes, and that's why we held that question for you last here. We had a couple goofy ones as, the salary and the Rondo stuff. We like to have a little fun with our guests on here because, we don't like talking robots.
No one likes to be a drone.
No, we don't.
But we'll definitely get you back on come the season starts, and we can actually analyze some basketball because basically, this summer's just been a drag for us with the Olympics. It's been, slowing down here. We just want to talk and watch basketball.
Yeah.
I know.
We're getting closer than you think.
Preseason.
That's true. We do got some preseason games that come up, and hopefully they play at the DCU Center again, and the ice can melt on the court. They can call it a halftime
Maybe
again.
A game at UMass again?
Maybe a game at UMass. Maybe we can travel around New England and see these games.
All right, well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks so much,
here.
Jess.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Everybody, that was Jessica Camerato from Comcast Sportsnet. You can check her out. We linked up her page on their website, so you can see all her articles. Her Twitter handle is jcamerato at nba.com. So one of the things that me and Brian always like to do after a guest, and since we have a little bit of time until Moke joins us, about 10-15 minutes, is we like to break down, some interesting things that were said on there.
Okay, well, why don't you show me how it's done here, Sir Unplugged Experience
Absolutely.
Man.
So one of the things she mentioned that kind of caught my eye was the Chris Joseph, and we hear this often with the Celtics team is they like somebody. They say they like him a lot during the camps, and, they talk him up in Vegas League, and then come the season, they're nowhere to be found. I think we felt that same way with Jajuan last year. Even though we didn't see it, the coaches liked it, and then he disappeared and was traded.
I think there's such a huge gap between I'm not saying that the Summer League isn't fantastic competition. They're some of the best players in the world. Such a huge gap between Summer League competition and then regular season NBA competition into NBA playoff competition. The gap is astronomical. So I think what you see when they really like a guy is him playing against not as good talent. And then obviously he looks good, and I'm sure he's a very, very good player, but then you go out there and play against LeBron James, and it's a whole different game.
The pace of the game is much, much faster in the NBA level. And it's funny because I get in debates with a lot of older folks. A lot of older folks like college basketball because they don't like the personalities of the NBA. They think they're spoiled brats, and they like the college kids because they earned it, even though those kids get paid money to go to these schools. But that's another topic for another day. But I always tell those people that think the college game is better, I say, no. The NBA game is much more complex. They're thinking a lot more. College, you're basically drones. You stand in a spot, you play in a zone defense, hey, we're playing a zone.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of guys that just clogging the paint. When the NBA, you're actually running sets and plays, and when you see experienced guys like Steve Nash and Rondo, they make the game look so easy, but it's not.
And it's a bigger stage, too. Not only is the talent level gapped, and the intensity is more intense. I don't know if that...
intensity more intense.
More intense intensity. It sounds like a car commercial. But, yeah, it's also a bigger stage, and nerves can kick in, and a guy is not likely to open up as much if he gets, starstruck by some of the players he's out there against. some of the veterans you probably grew up watching, like, say, a Kevin Garnett or something like of that nature. It's a whole different ballgame up there, and I think what you see in the Summer League, while it can tell you something about a guy's talent, it's not going to tell you exactly what he's going to do once he gets to the higher level.
Absolutely, and another thing that kind of struck, a thought in my brain when she was talking, when we talk about Kevin Garnett's salary compared to Chris Humphries, who's going to make more money than Kevin Garnett next year. Just let's put that out there. I would take Kevin Garnett on his worst year over Chris Humphries' best year, and that's just me. But anyways,
we don't know that yet.
We don't know. Chris Humphries could have a better year.
Now he's got all the Kardashians out of his life. He's
back to normal.
Ready to just go at it.
The fans are not going to boo him anymore. This is great. Chris is back in life. He's in Brooklyn now with Jay-Z, which maybe my question will answer Chris Humphries later on from Moke about the New Jersey Nets. But going back to it, Foreshadow. Jessica said something that kind of made me go, when she talked about Kevin Garnett.
Piqued your interest?
Piqued my interest. When she said we don't know how many games Kevin Garnett's going to play. Now, the reason that worries me is because the games are more spread out. There's more days off in between. The season's not going to be crammed. So to me, I don't see a reason why he can't play 70 to 80 games. I understand take a few here and there off, like when you go to play the Bobcats. Garnett doesn't need to suit up. That's a great time to throw Fab Melo in the starting lineup and say, hey, kid, go out there. Have fun, Go up against Bismarck. Bismack. So when she said that, we don't know how many games he's going to play, that makes me wonder, is he going to break down again? Could he break down? Because the Celtics really don't have a center. He's their center. Chris Wilcox is their backup center. And, two guys who have had injuries over the past couple of years and had to cut down their minutes. So that interests me. And we know the Celtics are going to play a smaller lineup, which I think would benefit Garnett, and, that would allow him to play a full season. But that's me. I don't know what you think.
No, I think you brought up a good point with, if it's a Bobcats game, obviously you can take that game off. But if we know one thing about Kevin Garnett, he's going to want to play in every single one of those games. He's been doing this since he's been in the league. He wants to play always. That's just the type of player he is. Now, will he? That would be up to probably Doc and Danny, and there would be probably some management decisions in there that would dictate that. But we know that he's going to want to play every single night. And, if you really look at it, since he's been a member of the Boston Celtics, for his age and how hard he plays, he's been surprisingly he has missed some time.
He had one injury.
Yep, but he's been pretty damn durable.
And that that one injury ended up costing a half a season and a possible title to Celtic fans. And we saw him slowly getting back into his normal health in 2010, and obviously 11 and 12, he regained his health and he rejuvenated his career going to the center. But you're absolutely right about him. He can't sit on the bench, and he won't sit in a suit on the bench because it's just too much for him. He's going to be like Dean Portman in the locker room at Mighty Ducks 2.
Honestly, though, I don't know how I feel about that one. A player not going because he makes up the excuse, I think it is, that, I can't just sit there and watch in a suit on the sideline. I don't know. I think that's sort of an excuse, if you ask me.
I agree. It could be a cop-out, but, we know how intense he is. And
right. I would never question that.
I mean, he might strangle somebody if he was in a suit on the bench.
Maybe he just doesn't own any suits. He usually comes in with the
headphones and
the
sweater
red hat and the nice jacket.
Yeah, he likes his sweaters, I noticed. But no, he's got own suits. I mean, he bought them all suits in Italy when he took the rookies out there.
That's true.
So, well, maybe he doesn't own suits. Maybe he just knows people who can get suits.
He knows where to access suits. He just would prefer not to wear them.
Oh, man. On that note, I think we should take a quick minute commercial break while we sit here, and, we'll get back in a couple minutes.
Well, don't let them know we're just going to sit here.
Stepping up. And we never give up. It's all about never giving in. And we never give up. It's about winning. Who wants to come on? Stepping up. This is what it's all about. Two great teams who are stepping up, and we know that you guys are ready to go. It's about who wants to come on. That's what great players do. Big plays. Stepping up. And we never give up. It's all about having the heart of the champion.
Mayhem is everywhere.
I'm a basketball hoop in your driveway. I've been standing over your car since 1986. I used to spend every day getting pounded by your signature 30-foot bank shot and watching you not dunk. But after 25 years standing here in the rain and getting pelted by runny bird poop, I'm as rusty as you are. Now, if so much as a fly lands on me, I'm going down. And if you have cut rate insurance, you might have to pay for the damage to your car yourself. So get Allstate, where agents keep you protected from mayhem like me.
Get the coverage you need and the discounts you deserve from an Allstate agent. Dollar for dollar, nobody protects you from mayhem like Allstate.
Call your local agent, 1-888-ALLSTATE, or go to allstate.com. Savings and protection based on coverage selected and are subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Actual savings will vary. Allstate Property and Casualty Insurance Company, Northbrook, Illinois.
And we're back, everybody.
And we're back.
We are back. You know, we're going to have Moke Hamilton join us for 2 teams, because that guy knows, well, he knows 30 teams, but it wouldn't be fair if he hogged all the teams.
Yeah, I guess so. But, yeah, we'll start talking about some of these New York teams now, not that we haven't been already. But, hey, if you're doing a Atlantic Division preview, I think we ought to be, tying it all in. There's a competition going on here.
There is a competition going on.
So let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets a little more, although we already have. Thank you for that lovely round of applause, everyone in the studio today.
In the Brooklyn area.
Yeah.
This is where we put the Wiz Brooklyn Notorious B.I.G. intro song on, but we don't have it yet.
Yeah.
Copyright issues. Jay-Z doesn't want to release it. He owns everything, just so you guys know. And let's talk about the New Jersey Nets apparel.
Excuse me?
New Jersey Nets.
The who Nets?
The Brooklyn Nets. We got to mix this up. Well, they got to play a game versus Brooklyn. Have they even worn the jerseys?
Maybe in the Vegas League. If you look at the box scores, if you go back in time and look at old New Jersey Net box scores, they have the new abbreviation.
Well, that's not fair, because they act like New Jersey never existed.
That's true. They just wiped it right off the map, which, in some people's opinion, maybe they ought to do with the Snookies and the Pauly D's.
I will say, though, Seattle feels no sympathy for New Jersey right now.
What do you think Snooki's baby is going to end up doing for, a career?
This is the topic we're going on to now?
I'm sorry. We brought up New Jersey. It's your fault. If you had called them Brooklyn Nets, I would have never asked you that question.
That's very true. And I think her baby's going to end up being twice the person she is in every aspect. That's all I'm going to say. You guys can use your imaginations. Go with it. Run with it. Do what you please. But, this Brooklyn team is going to be interesting because they spent a lot of money. They got a lot of talent. Is it enough talent? Are you happy with Brook Lopez being a maxed-out player? Are you happy with Travis Outlaw on your team?
Well, I believe Travis Outlaw, wasn't he amnestied?
Yeah, you're right. He is amnestied. You're right. Let's cross that name off.
Which I don't get. Travis Outlaw's a nice player. I think he could fit on that team. Speaking of fitting, though, how do you see these personalities meshing together? I'm going to ask Moke this as well. But, that's going to be a big factor here. Obviously, the talent is there. They've brought in some pretty nice players. But those are personalities as well, and they're going to have to mesh together.
Yeah, I don't think Deron would have signed if he didn't think he'd get along with Joe Johnson. Joe Johnson is a guy who needs the ball in his hand, and he's used to playing with subpar point guards who can't have the ball in their hand for too long because bad things happen.
And if he doesn't have the ball in his hands, he tends to get stagnant at times. He has been known to disappear, Joe Johnson.
Yeah, no, he does.
Sorry to interject.
No, he does disappear, and he disappears because it's almost like he doesn't know what to do without the basketball. He just stands there and watches, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves is, we all play pickup basketball, and you got those kids who just watch and stand there. It's like, move, buddy. I'll get you the ball if you move. So It's going to be interesting to see what kind of offense the Nets implement and in terms of, setting plays to get Joe Johnson the ball, get Joe Johnson moving, and then you also got Gerald Wallace on the other side. So, you got 2 decent scorers. Well, Joe Johnson's a better shooter than Wallace, but they're both good scorers. Gerald Wallace can still attack the rim with the best of them. He's only 30 years old, which, we always talk about the 30-year-old mark in the NBA, but we see guys now that are 34 and they're still competing. Look, Kobe's he's an exception, but, he's 35 years old, and 34, how old he might be right now, but you can still be effective at that age, and there's a couple guys in the division.
And Jared Wallace is just a pure athlete, and he always has been. Ever since he was in Sacramento and he was in that terrible dunk contest with Jason Richardson when they spun the wheel and had to imitate other dunks. Remember that?
Yeah,
it was horrible. I think Gerald Wallace should have won that one, but again, another discussion for another day. The point is, Gerald Wallace is a pure athlete. He's going to be jumping around, getting blocks, getting steals, being Crash Wallace. You're going to see that still, no matter what his age is. Yeah, and he is a dirty work guy, but in an extreme way. That's why they call him Crash.
Well, also, and I think this is where Humphries fits in, because Lopez is not a dirty work kind of guy. Lopez does not like the physical contact. He has, bum feet every year. I hear Nets fans come to me, because I'm a big anti-Brook Lopez guy, and we'll get into that later. But I'm not a big fan of him, and all the time the Nets fans give me all these excuses after excuses, and I haven't seen improvement in his 4 years in the league. I've seen it stagnant down in terms of rebounding and defense. His offense has gone up a little bit, but that's typical in the NBA. But, that's where Wallace and Chris Humphries come in, because they're not going to look for the ball, and their scoring opportunities are most likely going to come on putbacks or second-chance opportunities.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to play defense and crash the boards and do the stuff that the prima donnas don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, if the Brooklyn Nets are really competing with you, and I'm an opposing team, if I'm the coach of that team, I'm making sure that my players are boxing out.
Avery's that kind of guy, you know?
With Gerald Wallace and Chris Humphries going for those offensive rebounds, you're going to see a lot of that. And Brook Lopez, he's a big body too. Don't forget about him.
Yeah, but he'll still only get 6 rebounds at best per game, you know, and especially with 2 guys who want to kill the boards.
Now, with Brook Lopez, would you use the word stiff? It's usually assigned for big guys who can't really move,
like
don't really do much. Sean Bradley's of the world. I don't know if it really fits him.
No, why? Because he does get 20 points a game, or you know he's gotten in the range of
ability.
16 to 20 points per game. He can score. He can move up and down the court, even though he looks awkward. He looks like Roy Hibbert's rookie year.
Yeah. And
we saw how hard Roy Hibbert has worked, and I guess that's why I'm not a Brook Lopez fan, because I have someone to compare him to, and that's Roy Hibbert. When Roy Hibbert first came out, he was 7'3", slow as molasses, and you know all of a sudden he became, you know.
We worked at it.
Yeah, 5% body fat. So, without further ado, I believe we have Moke Hamilton joining us right now. Is that you, Moke?
Yeah, that's me. How's it going?
Doing great here. You're here with James and Jacob, and just so everybody knows, this is Moke Hamilton. Follow his Twitter handler. He's on Sheridan Hoops, and he writes a lot of fantastic pieces. He's in the New York area, so he's got 2 teams now and makes us guys over here in Boston a little jealous. You know, we'd like to have 2 NBA teams to go check out.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, the Nets are in Brooklyn now. This thing finally happened. You know, it seemed like it took a while. But, you know, the funny thing, and I don't know how much guys outside of New York City actually know, but there's like a bit of a civil war going on here in New York City. And it's funny because when the Nets announced that they were going to call themselves the Brooklyn Nets, a lot of people sort of wondered if they were alienating the other New Yorkers. And at this point, you know, it definitely seems like that's at least a possibility. But, I mean, we all know that just like Celtics fans, Knicks fans are some of the most diehard fans across the league. So I guess it's really not a surprise that, you know, there seemed to be some flag planting going on and some trash talking going on between, you know, the division in New York City.
Well, I always thought the New York Knicks referred to the city, not the state. Just but let's get this cracked. We're going to start with the Brooklyn Nets for, you know, about 15, 20 minutes and hammer out all those questions, and we'll hop over to the real team of New York.
I just can't let you get away with that there, buddy. I mean, as far as New York is concerned, you know, New York is Manhattan, but, you know, as a whole, New York City, you know, the 5 boroughs are there. Brooklyn being one of them. So it is confusing. Definitely is. You know, New York. Do you mean New York State? Do you mean Manhattan? Do you mean all 5 boroughs that make up the city? So, yeah, I get what you're saying there, but there definitely is some overlap, and it's going to be a lot of fun this season. I'll tell you that.
New York, city so nice they named it twice. Hey-o. All right, we'll start off with the Brooklyn Nets, that is. I'm saying New Jersey a few times on here.
As far as the Brooklyn Nets, what do you think the initial attendance is going to be like? Are they going to be like the Clippers of the East, or is this going to be a situation where New York and Brooklyn are sort of even in that regard?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, before I came on with you guys, you know, I'm busting my brain and I'm thinking about, you know, how many wins I think they're going to get. I'm thinking about Darren Williams' track record when he actually had talent around him back when he was with the Jazz. I'm thinking about all this other kind of stuff, and the last thing on my mind is what kind of attendance the Nets would have. That's such a great question. No, it's good, man. Keep me on my toes here.
My question is, you know, with the more help around Darren Williams, how do you see his game changing, if you see it changing at all?
Well, you know, I actually don't think that his game is going to change very much. You know, I think by this point in his career, you know, he's been in the league for a long time now. We know what he can do. Avery Johnson knows what he can do. And the guys that they've brought in around him were basically brought to augment what it is that he can do. Where you might see a difference with Williams is that you'll probably see him play off the ball a little more, mainly because Joe Johnson, as a pro, his best attribute really is his ability to create his own look and create his own shot. He's a decent defender and he's a great jump shooter, but I think that anybody that's watched him over the course of his career would certainly agree with the fact that he's one of the guys that you can give the ball to and let him go to work. So I think the Nets are going to do that. I think he'll probably get to create his own opportunity at least 10 to 12 times a game, and I think ultimately Williams and certainly Brook Lopez will probably benefit because of that. Now, to answer that first question about the attendance, I know that Barclays can hold, I think, 18,200. It's a very nice arena. It's certainly accessible via public transportation. So I don't know if they're going to be selling the place out every night from the very beginning, but what I can guarantee you is that if they start off well and if they win, 10 of their first 15 games or 10 of their first 18 games, which is definitely possible, I don't really think that they're going to have the same kind of empty arenas that they were playing in front of back when they were at the Izod Center in East Rutherford, New Jersey, or when they were at the Rock in Newark. So they're definitely in a better situation. I think their attendance will not struggle, to say the least.
Yeah, and winning cures everything, right? If they win games, the people will come.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fact. And the other thing that definitely cannot be overlooked here in terms of the attendance and in terms of the market is that there is a very, very healthy sect of Knicks fans that have grown very, very frustrated with James Dolan and with some of the dubious decisions that they feel the franchise have made over the course of the past couple of years. So, I mean, if you think of Knicks fans that are, maybe 20 to 25 years old, and certainly people that live in Brooklyn, and certainly people that live in Queens as well, Brooklyn is cool, it's hip, it's certainly fresh, and with a new arena and with Deron Williams and Joe Johnson and the cool Russian owner, there certainly is at least some incentive for some fans to jump ship, and that's something that we've been seeing and hearing being discussed around basketball circles in New York City for the past couple of weeks.
We love hipsters these days.
They're everywhere. Going back to Deron Williams, I'm kind of interested in how the personalities are going to mesh on this team and the egos. Do you think he cares that Joe Johnson's going to be making more money than him? Do you think he cares that there's, another guy in the spotlight in that city now? What's going to transpire as far as the personalities go?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, it's always hard to see inside of a guy's mind and to see inside of his heart and his brain to know exactly what he's thinking. But I mean, based on the conversations that I've had with Deron, I've met him a couple of times and I've spoken with him a couple of times. Everything that he says and anyone else that knows him would 100% agree with the fact that he's a very team-oriented guy. And I can tell you for sure that before the Nets made the move to bring in Joe Johnson, they asked Deron Williams if bringing him in would hurt the odds of him re-signing with the Nets. Williams did not guarantee the Nets that he would re-sign if they did get Johnson, but they certainly went to him and made sure that they knew how he felt about the prospect of bringing him in, and it was something that he was certainly open to. So, I mean, all of that to say, I do believe, based on what I know, went on behind the scenes, that Williams' biggest concern was being put in a position where he'd have a chance to contend and compete, and Johnson will certainly help that. So I don't think that there's going to be any issue there with the two of them meshing, in terms of what they can help each other do on the basketball court.
So staying with the Brooklyn Nets roster discussions here, do you think the Nets are done in terms of making any moves this year? And I guess this kind of lumps in with the Brook Lopez signing because I didn't understand the max contract for him, but I guess you got to, pay for what you can get because it's not like there was anybody else out there for them to go grab. And a lot of people justified that signing by saying they could move him at the deadline or, possibly next year. But let's stick to this first year. Do you think this is the roster heading into the season that will finish out the year, or do you think they might make some tweaks down the road?
Well, you know what? I'll do you one better than that. I mean, when you look at the Nets over the course of the next 4 years, they have so much money committed in salaries. I mean, they have, this season coming up, they're at about $82 million. Next year, they're at $83. And then in both 14-15 and 15-16, they're at about $75 million. So the thing that's really, really important to keep in mind when you're talking about, making moves and changing things about the team is that with that 14-15 season, the luxury tax not only becomes more harsh, but there is also going to be limitations placed on what teams can actually do to make moves if they are tax teams. Now, we don't know what the tax is going to be 2 years from now, but you can kind of be sure. The Nets have all of their first-round picks from now until 2017, so at the very least, they're going to be adding some money onto the ledger that we currently see. This team, for all intents and purposes, is the team that you're going to have, and it's the team that they're going to go to battle with. Now, in terms of this year, they certainly will have the opportunity to try to flip a guy like Brook Lopez or a guy like Chris Humphries and maybe get some value back in return for them. But, again, with the money that they've committed to these guys, I'm just not sure that there's going to be a major market out there for, these guys with these numbers attached to them and, with 2, 3, 4 years to go on these deals. So I think this is the team. And the other thing to say about Lopez, if you're talking about trading him, is now, Jacob, I know you just said that you're not too high on him. And I'm not sure how good he is either, but I think it's probably fair to say that he's one of the top 10 centers in the league. I think if you look down, the list of centers, obviously you have Dwight Howard and Bynum, they're right there at the top. You have Hibbert, you have Marc Gasol, maybe you want to put JaVale McGee or Tyson Chandler in there. But the point is Lopez is one of the top 10 centers, and big guys have always gotten paid. So, to pay him an average of $15 million per year for 4 years, it might be a little high, but, I think that's what you're going to pay for a young center that shows promise in the NBA.
Speaking of size on this Brooklyn Nets team, I think that could be something that hinders them. Do you think we're going to see Gerald Wallace play a lot of the 4 on this squad, considering they're sort of shallow at those big man positions? And how much is Reggie Evans going to play?
Well, so I'll take the second one first. Evans is one of those guys. Well, you know what? I guess you can sort of tie those two things together. The truth is that in the NBA, it's all about matchups. And, anyone that knows Avery Johnson knows that he's all about the matchups. He has his plan and he has his blueprint, and there are certain things that you're going to see this team do consistently. But they will play differently. The Knicks now, the Knicks, obviously, they're their intra-city rival, and they're also their division rival. So they're going to see the Knicks a lot. But the Knicks are one of the bigger teams in the league now, and there are other big teams out there. So I would not expect to see the Nets play Wallace at the 4, when they're playing a bigger team. But, with his skill set and with the reckless way that he plays the game and with his ability to rebound the basketball, playing him at the 4 and maybe going with Humphries at the 5, depending on the matchup, is certainly something that I think the Nets would consider. And it's something that I think could work in stretches. So, yeah, we might see that.
Now, one player that's kind of interests me is Marshawn Brooks. And, he kind of had a breakout rookie year. He was in the talks for rookie of the year running. He was a steal. He fell all the way down. Celtics drafted him, traded him, and he wasn't happy walking out of that draft night. We'll tell you that much. We were there, so we saw him firsthand. He was unhappy. But what are you looking for in terms of improvements from his game in this coming up to this upcoming year? Because he's kind of their, lone bench scorer.
Yeah, well, I think if it wasn't yesterday, it was maybe Tuesday. Brooks said that his goal and his aim is going to be to win the Sixth Man of the Year award, and that's a good thing. If I'm Avery Johnson or if I'm Billy King or I'm assistant general manager Bobby Marks, that's the kind of thing that I want to hear my second-year guard saying. And then the other thing about that is Brooks would have been the starter had the Nets not swung that move for Joe Johnson. So if he actually, excels and he actually takes coming off of the bench and being a bench scorer, if he embraces that role and if he's able to fulfill that, that will certainly help. But in terms of what he needs to do this season, last season he only shot about 43% from the field. For a shooting guard in the NBA, you want to be at closer to 44, 45% at least. You know, and obviously if you can get closer to 50, then that's excellent for a shooting guard in this league. So you certainly want to see him shoot the ball better. You want to see better shot selection from him. And the other thing for a rookie, obviously, the consistency. You know, the NBA game is so much faster and it's so much longer than a normal college game. So, I mean, last season he was at about 29 minutes per game. I don't know if he's going to be over that this season with Joe Johnson there. But mainly you want to see him be in better condition. You want to see more consistency from him. You want to see him make better decisions with the basketball. And if he makes better decisions passing the ball and if he can cut down on his turnovers, I think he averaged about 2 turnovers a game last year, and his assist-to-turnover ratio was basically 1, which is really not that good. So, I mean, any number of things. You know, but all that being said, he did have a very good rookie campaign, and I'll tell you, in the preseason, watching he and Iman Shumpert go at it, that was pretty fun. So, you know, I think that Brooks has a lot of potential, and yeah, Jacob, I'm sorry that the Celtics, you know, dealt him away to the Nets because he probably could have helped them.
Yeah, they could have used some of that scoring off their bench, at least someone who could create their own shot.
Exactly. Now, I tend to think that, you know, there's quite a few players that are overpaid on this Nets team, but that's the nature of the business. But since we like to have fun with our guests on here, and I had a little fun with Jess a little while ago, I said, you know, there's 4 New Jersey Nets that are going to be making more money than Kevin Garnett next year. And, you know, 3 names didn't surprise us, but 1 did. So if you had to rank the top 3 overpaid players on the Nets team this upcoming season, who are they and in what order?
Okay, well, that's a fun question. I appreciate that. Let's have some fun here. Okay, so for me, I would say the 3rd highest paid player on the team, I'd probably have to go with. Okay, well, you know what? Let's just do this. Let's throw out Deron Williams and Gerald Wallace immediately. My opinion on Deron Williams, I think Williams is one of the best point guards in the league. And I don't know many people that would argue with that. I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh, I said I agree. I think he deserves that money. You know, I have no problem paying a top 3 point guard, you know, like a top 3 point guard.
Right. Now, the thing about Wallace is, you know, maybe Wallace got a year more than he should have. I think that might be fair to say given his age and the mileage that he has. But, I mean, paying a guy that can do what Gerald Wallace does, $10 million per year, based on the other money that you've seen being thrown around, you know, I really think that's an okay contract. I can live with that. So number 3, I'm going to go with Brook Lopez. And it's really funny because I was just singing his praises not too long ago. But I mean, if you want to talk about value, you know, I think that you look at a guy like Marcin Gortat, who we did not know what he was or how good he was when he got the deal. So what happened with him? Dallas gave him an offer sheet, if I'm not mistaken. Orlando actually matched that, and then they eventually traded him to the Phoenix Suns, obviously. But you know, those are the guys that I like to see, you know, guys that can do everything for you from the center position. They can play defense, they can finish the basket, they can play the pick and roll, they can rebound the basketball, and he's making about half of what Brook Lopez is. The thing about Lopez is, aside from last season, he's been very, very durable. He didn't miss a game his entire career before last season. And his scoring average went up in each of his first 3 years. So there's definitely reason to pay him this money, and both the Bobcats and the Trailblazers were willing to pay him that money. So if you're the Nets, you can't let that happen. You have to re-sign the guy. I get that. But just in terms of dollars and in terms of value, I think that you could make the case that Brook Lopez might be a little overpaid, especially considering he was only able to play 5 games last season. So he'd be my number 3 guy. My number 2 guy, I think I'd have to go with Chris Humphries. I think Chris Humphries might be slightly overpaid. The only thing about him is that he's a walking double-double. And from the power forward position, that's something that has become very, very rare in today's NBA. Now, the number 1, I mean, I don't think that, you know, I think that you could easily make the case that Joe Johnson is the most overpaid player in the league. And there are certainly things that you can say about Joe Johnson. You know, he's pretty much a perennial all-star, and he's proven that as the go-to guy on the Atlanta Hawks, he can at least get you in the neighborhood of 45 to 50 wins, and he can give you a fighting chance of winning a first-round playoff series. We know that. But, I mean, when you look at the 4 years left on his deal and you consider that he still owed nearly $90 million, it's hard to imagine that's what you're paying for that. You know, comparatively speaking, he's making more money than LeBron James, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he's right around Carmelo Anthony. But I mean, you know, he's making less than Kobe Bryant, who's the highest paid player in the league. But the point is, Joe Johnson is in the top 5, top 10 highest paid players in the league, and I'm just not sure that you know, his production warrants that. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is it's funny. Players usually get rewarded for producing, but Joe Johnson got that 6-year maximum contract after he had one of his worst showings in the playoffs. And the funny thing is, after looking at the summer of 2010, he is the only guy of the heralded free agents that got a 6-year maximum contract. How about that?
Well, different ownership in Atlanta at the time.
That is quite, and you never want to base your contracts on potential rather than production, and it looks like that may have been what happened there in that situation.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's certainly a balance, and just to you know, recant that quickly.
Sure.
My position is that when Rondo got his 5-year deal for $55 million, you know, I thought that there was no way that he was ever going to justify that, but obviously I was wrong in that. So I think there's a balance. I think it's a balance between potential and what they've actually given you, but I would certainly agree to say that Joe Johnson, you know, that contract was a mistake, and I think we all knew it from the very beginning.
Yeah, and we were talking about what the team is going to look like, if there are going to be additions or subtractions. Staying on a lighthearted note here, we did just read that Eddie Curry worked out with the team. Did you hear anything about that? Are they interested in him, or did they just think he needed a workout?
Well, actually a good question. From what I hear, they actually are in the market for another big body, and Curry is just one of a few guys that they're considering. Curry's he's one of a few guys that they're considering, and they gave him a shot. And I don't think there's really much reason to read into that at the moment. I mean, Lou Amundson is still out there as a free agent as far as I know, and he's a guy that might be a better fit. And another thing to look at is, you know, if Eddie Curry were still able to contribute, the Miami Heat probably would have tried to hang on to him. So I don't think I would read too much into that just yet. But, you know, there probably will be more said over the coming days.
Now, you have another more serious
one?
Well,
I was going to also mention Jerry Stackhouse to see if Moke had any ideas on what his role would be with the team.
Well, I mean, you know, one thing that we know for sure is over the course of an 82-game season, there are certainly going to be injuries. There's certainly going to be attrition. Coaches like having guys at the end of the bench, you know, those 12th guys, those 13th guys. They like having guys that are familiar. They like having guys that are professionals that they believe they can call on to play, you know, if the situation warrants it. I mean, that being said, I'm not really looking for Jerry Stackhouse to do any kind of heavy lifting with the Nets. You know, obviously they have a very, very dynamic starting backcourt. And off the bench they have Brooks and C.J. Watson. And I think Watson, you know, I think his acquisition has gone under the radar. You know, he has not gotten the credit he deserves for helping to keep the Bulls afloat in the absence of Derrick Rose last season. And somehow the Nets got him for a minimum contract, which to me is just amazing. But off the bench, I think you're obviously going to see Watson and Brooks do most of the heavy lifting in the backcourt. And I think Keith Bogans, what he gives them defensively and on the perimeter, there's certainly a place in the rotation for him. So, I mean, that makes Stackhouse, by my count, the 6th guard that's going to get minutes. And, you know, barring some very, very unfortunate injury situation, I really don't think that he's going to be a big part of their rotation this season.
We like to talk about the relevant players in the league, such as Eddie Curry and Jerry Stackhouse on this podcast. And I will say I'm pretty sure that Jerry Stackhouse and Tony Horton just took offense to you saying that Jerry Stackhouse can't do any heavy lifting. The guy's a P90X graduate, so he's pretty fit for his age.
All right. Well, when I go down to Barclays, I'm going to make sure that I keep my distance from him because I don't want to experience any of that firsthand.
And now, staying on a lighthearted question here, which jersey do you think Jay-Z is going to wear courtside first?
It has to be Deron Williams. I mean, there's no doubt about that. If Williams opted to go to the Mavericks, this franchise, we're supposed to be objective, and we're not supposed to have any sort of rooting interest. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, man. I would have been very, very sad for the Nets as a franchise if Williams opted to go to Dallas, because after all the pomp and circumstance and after displacing residents via eminent domain in Brooklyn and building that arena and spending all of the money and just going through all of what they went through to actually make this happen, it would have been awesome for them to get Dwight Howard. Obviously, from a fan perspective and from a marketing perspective, that didn't happen. On top of that, if they ended up losing Williams, it could have sunk them before they even began. So, there's no question that Williams is the franchise. There's no question that they certainly owe him. And, I mean, if Jay-Z shows up wearing a Mirza Teletovic jersey, I'm going to be very, very surprised.
And just to sum things up here with the Nets, because I think we're going to move on to the Knicks in a bit, what do you see as the ceiling for this Brooklyn Nets team? Are they, eligible to make the Eastern Conference Finals this season? And what would be the worst-case scenario for them?
Well, I certainly don't think that they're going to sniff the Eastern Conference Finals. But I think that they're a very, very respectable basketball team. I think that they should certainly be in the 45 to 50 win range. We'll see how that works out, mainly because the Atlantic Division is going to be such a dogfight. Four teams in the Atlantic are going to make the playoffs. That's almost a fact. And, I mean, I don't think we've seen something like that since 2009 when the Southwest Division had four teams that pretty much won 50 games. The Hornets won 49, and they were the fourth-place team in the division. So the Atlantic is going to be a dogfight. But, I have a lot of confidence in the Nets, and the main reason why is because of Williams. The 5 full years that he spent in Utah, he won 41, 51, 54, 48, and 53 games. So this guy's a winner. And, now that he actually has some talent, if Lopez can stay on the court and if Joe Johnson can simply be himself, Williams has never had a problem getting guys open shots, and he's never had a problem finding big guys on dives to the basket. And you can ask Carlos Boozer and Mehmet Okur that. So I think that they'll be good. And like I said, 45 wins I see for them. And, the worst-case scenario, I would say the worst-case scenario for them is maybe sneaking in at a number 6 or number 7 seed, if they have trouble out the gate or if they have issues with injuries. But if not, I actually wouldn't be surprised to see them and the Knicks end up with the 4 and 5 seeds and actually end up playing each other in the first round. And maybe that's some wishful thinking just because I think it would be great for New York City basketball, but I certainly think something like that is within the realm of possibility. And I think that the Nets are certainly going to be one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the East this year.
Moke, we agree with you 100% about 4 teams making it. We've been saying that nonstop on this podcast, and that's why we're not talking about that 15, because they bore us. So we're done with the Nets now. Let's move on to the real New York team. I'm sure the real New Yorkers will appreciate that one. Hey, you got to come in and win some games first before you get dubbed the real New York team. So let's start off right off the bat with the 2, high-profile guys on this team. Who's going to be more important to the success of the New York Knicks this upcoming season? Carmelo Anthony or Maurice Stoudemire?
Can we do a push? Can I split the difference there? The truth is, I think, you know what? I think I'm going to have to say a Maurice Stoudemire. And it's difficult to say that, But at this point, I think we all know who Carmelo Anthony is. A lot of people want him to be LeBron James. A lot of people want him to be Dwayne Wade. They want him to be a two-way player. They want him to distribute the basketball to his teammates. And, that's not really his game. This is a guy that's going to give you 25 points a night. He's a guy that's not going to give you 100% effort on the defensive end at all times, though he may surprise you sometimes with, the ability to stay in front of his man. But you know what you're going to get from Anthony. I'm going to go with Stoudemire mainly because he had such a miserable year last year. And the troubling thing about it was anyone that was around him the year before knows that he was just a totally different guy. Obviously he dealt with a lot off the court. He dealt with some injury issues. And, the team changed right before his very eyes. Within a year, this is amazing. As of right now, Maurice Stoudemire is the longest tenured by consecutive tenure. He's the longest tenured Knick. And if you think about that, that is amazing. But the point is, Stoudemire, he needs to bounce back in the worst way. He spent some time working with Akeem Olajuwon this offseason, and if that helps him at all develop some sort of low post game, it'll go a long way toward opening up the floor for everybody else on the Knicks, including Anthony. And the other thing about developing that post game is if he can play the 5 against some smaller opponents, the same way we mentioned Chris Humphries earlier, that will help the Knicks play a unit that can run and gun, keep the floor open and spread, and help them score some more points. Defensively, they should be very, very good. But offensively, they're going to have to find ways to score the ball. And I think that with Stoudemire's gifts and with what used to be an automatic touch from 15 to 20 feet, if he can find that back, I do think that the Knicks would have a chance of challenging the Celtics for the Atlantic Division. But it would definitely require Stoudemire turning back the clock a little bit and showing us some of that post game that none of us actually think that he has. Or maybe I shouldn't say that, but I'm not convinced. I'm not really sure that you can develop a post game over the course of just one summer. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I think if I were to say that one of them were more important than the other, I guess I'd have to go with Stoudemire if I couldn't choose both of them equally.
Yeah, and Moke, I'm glad you brought up the Knicks defense there because you saved me having to come up with a segue. I was just about to ask you about the defense, particularly with those two players we spoke about, Carmelo Anthony and Maurice Stoudemire. Is this the year they really start to commit to defense? Because it looks like with the personnel that they have, with Tyson Chandler and Marcus Camby joining the inside there, they could be a pretty formidable defensive team if they had some commitment from those two guys.
Yeah, well, so my thing with that is, the Dallas Mavericks were able to get Dirk Nowitzki a championship, and I'm not going to say that Dirk Nowitzki rededicated himself to playing defense. I think that Nowitzki tried to not be a turnstile, but what the Mavericks were able to do with Chandler and Brendan Haywood is protect him. And is to give him the backup that he actually needed to be able to succeed despite his defensive inadequacies. So that being said, with the Knicks, when you look down the roster, Shumpert will probably be back sometime after January. So for now, let's not really consider him. But without question, Ronnie Brewer, I almost said Corey Brewer, Ronnie Brewer, Tyson Chandler, Marcus Camby, Kurt Thomas, these are guys that are going to go out there and they're going to go after it on the defensive end. To answer your question, I am not prepared to say that either Anthony or Stoudemire are going to all of a sudden become defensive stalwarts. But what I will say is I do think the Knicks can probably be successful in spite of that. J.R. Smith and Jason Kidd and Raymond Felton, all of these guys are at least decent defenders. And when you look at what they were able to accomplish defensively last season under those last 24 games of the season under Mike Woodson, there is no reason to not be optimistic about this team on the defensive side of the basketball. And, I said that I would peg the Nets for 45 to 50 wins. I would have the Knicks slightly above them mainly because I do believe that their defense is going to be really, really good, and I think that their offense with two steady quarterbacks manning that position will probably find a little more synergy and chemistry this season than they were able to last season. So, I like what the Knicks have going, and defensively I think they'll be pretty solid, even if Stoudemire and Anthony are not able to become all-NBA third-team type defenders.
Moke, you do this to me every time. You make me cross off all these questions I have because you answer them before I can ask them.
The problem is I just talk too much.
Plenty for you, and I've known your style now. And do you see any increased roles for any of the bench players like J.R. Smith or Shumpert when he returns? Is there anybody on the roster that you see having to step up to a bigger role this upcoming season?
I don't think so. Mainly because my position is that the Knicks are a deeper team. And, Novak was a big part of what they did last season, but I think you'll probably see his minutes limited this season. I think maybe J.R. Smith, and the main reason for that is because, again, Iman Shumpert is going to be out for a while. Now, Shumpert made a name for himself on the defensive side of the basketball, and he was very, very inconsistent offensively, but the touch on his jumper and the stroke on his jumper, and when he was healthy, his ability to get to the basket, it was something that the defense had to at least respect. Ronnie Brewer is so limited offensively with the ball in his hand. I'm not sure that the Knicks are going to be able to depend on him at that two-guard spot, for long stretches if they find themselves in an offensive shootout against the likes of, say, the Milwaukee Bucks or even the Miami Heat or the Boston Celtics. All of those teams can score, So that being said, I think you may actually see Smith start a couple of games. And, he's been renowned as being a very good three-point shooter for most of his career. Last season, I would say toward the end of the season, I think he was pretty erratic from distance. That's something that he would certainly have to correct this season. So if there's one guy that they might need a little more from, at least from the guys returning from last season, I would certainly say J.R. Smith, especially when you consider that Shumpert is going to be out for a while. But all that being said, they have a pretty deep team. I think that they can certainly play 10 men if they so choose. So I don't think any one person outside of maybe Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire is going to be expected to do too much.
Yeah, and depth is certainly on this roster. You look at the point guard and the center positions in particular. I'm interested in those because it looks like there could even be some position battles. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that Raymond Felton could win the starting job from Jason Kidd, and I also don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that Marcus Camby could see a large bulk of minutes rather than Tyson Chandler.
Well, so the thing about Chandler is, I'm not really sure. So seven-footers are very, very strange animals. And the thing about them is, the human body is not really meant to be that big. So when you have a guy that's 7 feet tall, 7'1", if you're playing him at 35 to 40 minutes a night, even if he's not missing time, he's certainly going to get banged up. And now Chandler, though he was healthy most of last season and though he was healthy when the Mavericks made their title run, he's kind of had some injury issues over the duration of his career. He was actually traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but they rescinded that trade because they were concerned with issues with his feet. They were concerned that he would eventually, be a guy that was always hurt and unable to play. So health and seven-footers, it's certainly a concern that most NBA teams have. That being said, I think that Chandler is probably going to be around 28 to 30 minutes next season. I don't think he's going to be up near 35. And I think a big part of the reason why the Knicks wanted to go out and get Marcus Camby was so that they could spell Tyson Chandler but still maintain the type of defensive intensity that they had when he was on the floor. Because last season, I think Chandler missed just a few games. But, it was night and day. When he went off the floor, their defense would fall apart and it would collapse. And a big part of the reason why was because Tyson Chandler was the quarterback of the Knicks defense. So I'd agree with that, and I think that Camby is going to play a pretty good amount of minutes. I think that Kurt Thomas will get minutes as well, and a big part of the reason why those guys were brought in here was to help keep that defensive intensity up when Chandler is going to the bench.
Now, I got one more serious question, and as you can tell, the format we're doing here, we're asking a lot of serious questions and a couple of fun questions. So my last serious question is, if you would address the Knicks fans going into this upcoming season, what kind of expectations should they have in terms of where they can plateau?
Okay, so we're talking about the ceiling?
Yes, like what do you see as if they overachieve and they accomplish everything that they set out to accomplish, how high do you think they can go? Do you think they can get to the Eastern Conference Finals? Do you think they can get to the Finals? Do you think they can win a Finals? And I guess since you like to do the floor too, what is your lowest expectations from this team?
Okay, well, to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, I just don't really see how anybody is going to beat the Miami Heat. I think that this season LeBron James, being that he got the monkey off his back and he got that chip off of his shoulder, no pun intended there. Maybe I should say he got the chip on his shoulder now. But, I think that he's going to play. I think you're going to see a different player. I think he's going to play the game more relaxed. I think he's going to play with less pressure on him. And I think he's going to ultimately be better. Now, that being said, when you consider the talent they have on that team and when you remember that they added Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis, who are only two of the best three-point shooters of maybe the past, 10 years, Ray Allen being the greatest ever, I don't know how high you want to put Lewis, but he certainly is capable. But the point is, I don't see anybody beating the Miami Heat personally, but if we're talking about the ceiling, I would say that that's the only team. If I'm a Knicks fan, the only team that I would not think that we had a reasonable chance of beating would be the Miami Heat. I think the ceiling for this Knicks team would probably be 55 wins, winning the Atlantic Division, and, making a run to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe losing to the Miami Heat in 6 games or so. I would say that's the ceiling. I don't think this is a team that is ready to win a championship yet or maybe even seriously contend. And if they somehow were able to win the Eastern Conference, I don't think that they would be able to beat either the Lakers or the Thunder out west, and those are the two teams that I would pick to come out of the Western Conference. So that being said, my ceiling for them, I would say it would probably be the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe 55 wins or so. The bottom, it's just almost unfathomable for me to even imagine this team not making the playoffs. And the conference is getting better, and I think that if you don't win 42 games, you're not going to have a chance to win to win a playoff spot. So that being said, I would say the bottom for this team, I guess I would say, is being a 500 team. I certainly would not expect, under the worst scenario for the Knicks to win less than 41 games this season, just based on the talent that they have, based on what they showed last season for those 24 games under Mike Woodson, and based on the fact that overall, from top to bottom, I think they're a deeper, better unit than they were last season. So I think that those are my answers for you there.
Yeah, I certainly share some of the same sentiment there as far as the Miami Heat in the East go. I feel like anytime I have a discussion about any team in the East with someone, it always ends with, well, it doesn't matter because they'll probably lose to the Miami Heat in the finals if they made it there anyway. But
the only thing about the Heat that is worth noting is that both Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh were both forced to pull out of the Olympics because of injuries. So if those, Wade had knee surgery, Bosh had an abdominal issue. If those are things that linger, and if those are things that don't correct themselves over the course of the season, well, you never know. But assuming health, and we always should assume health when we're doing this type of thing, I think that the Heat and, number 2, the Celtics are certainly head and shoulders above the rest of the competition in the Eastern Conference.
Sure. And getting back to the Knicks here, we're going to keep up with these lighthearted questions here. I'm looking at some of the guys that we've been talking about on this Knicks roster. You've got Marcus Camby at 38, Jason Kidd at 39, Kurt Thomas will be 40 in October. That's combined 117 years of life between 3 guys. Is this a bringing the old out with the new type of attitude at the Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is. Well, put it this way: Kevin Garnett is one of the oldest. He's one of the oldest players in the NBA now at this point, and I mean Kobe Bryant is getting up there in age as well, as is Ray Allen. Medical science, right? And we're gonna go to medical science, right? So we should mark this day on the calendar. No, but I mean the truth is, you look at Steve Nash, you look at Jason Kidd, you look at Jason Terry. We are seeing guys playing at a very, very high level, past their mid-30s, and that's not something that we've really seen a lot over the course of, I would say, the past 20 years. And I definitely think that, players just being more in tune with nutrition and training and how they take care of their bodies, I think all of that has to do with it. Certainly the care that they're getting from the medical staff on the teams and the sophisticated, instruments and tools and treatments and everything that they're using. I mean, it's all helping. So, I mean, they're certainly an older team than they've been in years past. But, I'm not sure that that's necessarily a bad thing. What I would be more concerned about is whether or not the overall talent base of the team is better than it was last season. And, I mean, when you talk about, swapping out the likes of Josh Harrelson and Landry Fields and Jerome Jordan for, Marcus Camby and Jason Kidd and Raymond Felton and guys who otherwise have proven over the course of their careers that they are at least capable professionals, I think that that's probably a more important thing to look at than the age. The biggest thing with the age is you just got to kind of keep your fingers crossed that these guys are able to hold up over the course of an 82-game season, 90 if you include the preseason, and then maybe 105 if you have a healthy run in the playoffs. So, playing 100 basketball games over the course of 9 months, it's not easy, but that's where having a deep 10-man unit comes into play. And, I think that the Knicks have that, and I think that this season they'll probably fare better than they did last season.
You're probably not the only one that thinks that way, Moke. I'm sure a lot of New York fans, are jumping up and down and listening to you speak about the team. And my last question to you is a little bit about the finances, the financial side of things. And how can the Knicks compete with in terms of merchandise sales without Jeremy Lin and with that new swag that's coming out of Brooklyn?
That's a very good question. I mean, I'm not sure that. Well, they're the New York Knicks, and they never really have a problem selling jerseys. The only thing is they kind of missed an opportunity now because, the fans that didn't throw their Raymond Felton jerseys away when he was traded, now instead of going out and buying a new one, they're probably just going to throw it back on, right?
You get the old duct tape and just tape over whatever number he's wearing now. If he's still wearing the same number,
or you can do that. Long. Right, or you could do that. I mean, I guess that's a good question. I think that there was a statistic out there maybe back in June that said that the Brooklyn Nets sold more jerseys in their first week than the New Jersey Nets sold all of last season, or something like that. Yeah,
they're awesome jerseys, and I'll tell you a quick story before I let you go. When I was in New York for the draft, I was staring at somebody in the street, midnight, stumbling out of a bar, and I saw someone wearing the hat and the jersey, and I was just staring at him. He looked at me and goes, "What, you got a problem?" I was like, "No, just it's good jersey. And now I want one." So that's my story. I'll probably end up with a Kerry Kittles Brooklyn Nets jersey. Long story there, too. And they look good.
It's funny. So you take a trip down to New York, and you're looking at a guy coming out of a bar, and it's such a New York thing for him to ask you if you've got a problem instead of saying, "Hey, how you doing?" Right?
Basically, that's how I kind of viewed it as. But I got no more questions for you, Moke. You got any, James?
I think we're good. He's done more than we could have ever asked him for.
Yeah, I told you, Moke's a fantastic guy, and we look forward to having you on and talking some Nets and Knicks basketball once we have some games and some strategies to analyze.
Well, you know what? I just want to say, thanks a lot, you guys, for having me on. It's always nice coming on and talking with you. And I think it's going to be a very, very exciting season in New York basketball. And that's the bottom line because Moke Cold said so. That's my tip.
Just so you know, this guy right here is one of the biggest wrestling fans you'll ever meet in your life.
Yeah, you just made my day, Mr. Hamilton.
That's exactly why I did that. That's exactly why I did that, Jacob. I do my homework, man. I do my homework.
Yeah, that a boy.
Oh, man, he knows. Well, Moke, we'll definitely have you back on, and we plan on attending some games out in Brooklyn and
next
New York.
time maybe we'll have glass shatter as you enter the podcast.
That would be awesome. And, if you guys...
Thanks so much for joining us, Moke.
Hey, no problem, man.
Everybody, that's Moke Hamilton from Sheridan Hoops, one of the finest blogs and websites to ever come about. Chris Sheridan has a fantastic crew over there, and he has an all-star in Moke Hamilton. Follow him on Twitter, Moke Hamilton. And now we're going to start talking about that fourth playoff team that we've been promising about. Woo! I mean, what do we think about the 76ers? Where's Doug Collins when we need him?
Yeah, well, I'm sure he's still on his way back from from the Olympics. He was great in those broadcasts, and it really, when it comes to the Philadelphia 76ers and Doug Collins, I thought he might be a little upset with the trade just because it seemed that he loved Andre Iguodala a lot when I was watching those broadcasts of the Olympic Games. But I'm sure bringing in a big guy like Andrew Bynum, who's going to change the entire team, is probably something that he welcomes with open arms.
Oh, absolutely. But Collins is an interesting coach. He tends to wear out his welcome. With players over time, it seems like he loses locker rooms over time. So changing up your roster a little bit, which I think one of the biggest issues the 76ers had was interior scoring. And they finally got somebody. They shipped Elton Brand out of town. He's as good on one leg as he is on two. So, he's not a good player these days. And they got a young, talented center who most people believe is the second best center out there. And so we're going to have on Mo from Barstool, Philly, join us and talk a little bit of 76er basketball. And who better than the guy who is the king of blogs in Philadelphia? How are we doing today, Mo?
Doing pretty good, man. Feels great. How you guys doing?
We're fantastic. And just so you know, we're from the Boston area, so we're very familiar with the stool empire that is. And, we're both fans of Philadelphia. We've had fantastic times down there many times.
Yeah.
And just a quick story for you. We actually noticed it in Philly because we were in Toronto and saw a photo of Steven Jackson and Jermaine O'Neal in the Hooters in Toronto. And while we were down there getting Geno's, we noticed the same photo, and they might have been wearing the same outfit too. I don't want to.
Long weekend for those guys.
It was a long weekend for those guys, but it's great to have you on, and we'll just start kicking it off.
Well, let me first say before you get started that you actually made the wrong choice there too. You went to Geno's. That's more of a touristy spot as it is, but most people know to go to Pat's over Geno's.
We've been to both. We tried both that day.
That is true. We went to both, and we're going to bring that up a little later, I do believe.
Yeah, we don't want to blow our load too early here. But yeah, we ran into that at the ballpark, and they said, don't be a tourist. Be from Philadelphia and go to Pat's. So they were both good, and I think we edged with Pat's. But let's get on to some basketball discussions here, and tell us about the reaction of the Philly fans once they found out the trade that was sending Andre Iguodala to Denver and was netting them the second best center in the league.
Tears of joy. I don't know how. What's the top pinnacle of excited you can be?
Orgasm.
We were orgasmic. It's really silly. We've been trying to trade this guy for years, right? I've been a fan of Iguodala. I think most people who consider themselves, real fans of the Sixers respect the guy for his all-around game, defense, running the floor, team leadership, yada yada. But we traded him for the second best center in the league. There's nothing better we could have hoped for Iguodala. Monte Ellis almost got dealt for Iguodala at one point, and we get Bynum. Yeah, much better.
And I feel like the Sixers really had a glut in that position in the first place. You have Evan Turner, you brought in Jason Richardson now and Nick Young, Darrell Wright. You had all kinds of guys. Thaddeus Young can even play the small forward. It seemed like while Iguodala probably still was the best player on the team, there were guys ready to come in and replace him.
Yeah, and it's been that way for years. The Sixers have had a hoarding problem with small forward. Every draft we get a new one and they keep them on the bench and let them get 4 minutes a game. It was nonsensical, but we got rid of it, and it kind of gives Evan Turner his chance to really kind of command the ball a little bit more.
Speaking of Evan Turner, aka Meatwad, what are your expectations of the fine young swingman for this upcoming season?
I think he's gonna have a good season. A lot of fans early on were down on the guy because he was number 2 pick, and it's not like we're getting Durant here. We got Evan Turner, and he kind of is what he is, but he's steadily improving. So the guy really he dominates the ball. So that's maybe a downside to the guy. So when he's on the floor, he needs the ball in his hands to be effective. But he is effective when he has the ball in his hands. The dude can score. He's deceptively good at passing. He has great handle. The only problem is he's kind of a dick sometimes, and he has a weird voice or whatever you want to tag on him. But game-wise, we expect him to make a big leap here, and bringing Bynum kind of eases him into more of a leadership role without having to be the guy that is the leader.
And with Andre Iguodala leaving and with Lou leaving, do you think that there's going to be a lot of upset fans, or are they just also overjoyed for Andrew Bynum that they sort of forgot about those two guys? I'm pretty sure Lou was pretty popular down there, if I am correct at that.
Oh, yeah, you are. Lou's the man. I mean, everybody in the city liked Lou. I mean, the dude had a racing flag tattoo in his armpit. I mean, you gotta love crap like that. That's awesome. But he was also real big in the community. Like, he went out. He was with some of the local rappers. He'd hand out food in the communities, clothes and stuff like that. So it went more with Lou than anybody else. But we're fine. We got fine.
Hey, if you're out there with the rap community with Will Smith, and you're in good company out in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. But let's go on to something that's a little interesting. We're going to talk about a big white guy for a second here, and that's Spencer Hawes. There's all these talks about moving him to the floor with the new acquisition, and that he could probably transition into a poor man's Paul Gasol, or some people actually think he might be a Paul Gasol. What is your take on that move?
I'm in the more closer to Paul Gasol camp, but I can understand the people who think he's like a inside-out pockets, very poor, not a dime to your name version of Paul Gasol. The guy, that's his natural position. I mean, when you look at his skill set, he's a 7-foot guy, yeah. He has slightly improved rebounding than he had early on, but he's a 7-foot guy that shies away from contact and wants to shoot the jumper. So, what better opportunity to pair him with one of the best centers in the league, play a little high-low, and it makes it easier for Doug Collins to kind of just copy what Phil Jackson was doing for years and try to replicate the same thing.
I'm just going to say a name, and you can talk about it for a little bit. Kwame Brown.
Oh, man. I don't know if anyone's listening here really reads the blog, but I've been crapping on Kwame Brown for a long time. But after they got Bynum, I felt a little better about it. I mean, at first, my initial reaction to Kwame Brown was utter disgust, hatred. I think I threw up on my keyboard. I had to clean that off. It was the worst thing because Doug Collins had come out and said that he was our starting center. And hearing your head coach come out and say that Kwame Brown is your new starting center makes you want to put a fist through your monitor. So, I mean, the guy's not good. But
if we were playing a word association, I would say Kwame Brown, and then I would think Michael Jordan. But not for basketball
Kwame Brown,
general manager reasons. But it's interesting that he's gone from Spencer Hall's gone from you're on the bench, Spencer, because Kwame Brown's our starting center, to wait, you might be Paul Gasol. Let's put you back in the starting center. That interests me there. And
just to clarify, they were actually going to start Halls of the Four with Kwame Brown, and that was the big dramatic press release thing, which was like, okay, well, why?
I can't wait till the 2K comes out.
So I have to play the 4 and take jump shots all day, but I also have to do all the rebounding because Kwame Brown's not going to do it.
Kwame Brown's small hands are getting all my shots.
So I guess we'll just have to wait for 2K to come out. And I might try that lineup with a Kwame Brown at center and put a little Spencer Hawes at the 4. But my next question is going to be about the other acquisition, one of my favorite guys, not on terms of playing basketball, but I just love his character off the court. And that's my main man, Swaggy P, Nick Young. With their rival, Swaggy P, do the 76ers take the crown for the most stylish team in Philadelphia?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, actually, no, I take that completely back. They're not even close. But they are a team that has a little bit of swag now. I mean, Iguodala, he's real middle of the road in terms of personality. He's not going to get too high or too low. And the guy just, he is who he is. He puts his head down. He plays well. He gives lame interviews. But you got guys like Swaggy P, you got Evan Turner, who's going to meet wide and say, politically incorrect things every once in a while and piss off the coach. You got Spencer Hawes, preaching GOP stuff. It's really great to actually have a team with some personality rather than a bunch of nobodies who are going to lose in the first round every year.
And it's fun to rant about those guys, too, like the Kwame Browns and things of that nature. I'm sure if Elton Brand was still on the team, you might have a few gripes with him as well as an old man.
Which is funny, though, but Elton Brand actually built up a lot of respect among the Philly fans. I mean, we had a rough run with Sixers guys that were bringing in, we brought in some bums and some guys at the end of their career, like Chris Webber came in and stunk it up for a couple of years and a bunch of money. Yeah. And then we brought Elton Brand in, and everyone kind of felt the same thing happening, but Elton battled through some injuries, played tough, was one of the best, post defenders in the league. I mean, the guy he plays hard. He is who he is. He's a broken knee old man. Right.
And Jacob got to talk about his boy Swaggy P. I want to talk about my boy, the Broad Street bully, Lavoy Allen. Now, last year going into the season, I don't know if you kept up with this, but ESPN, who you guys obviously are sort of competing with, as Barstool.
Where you're going with, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, they ranked him number 500 overall on their list of the top 500 players. Did he take offense to that, do you think? And where would you rank him this coming season?
I think he did take offense to that. And that was a popular story around here, that Lavoy Allen was quite literally the worst player in the league, as voted by ESPN. But no, I mean, he last year when Elton Brand got in foul trouble or just, decided to be old again, he was our best post defender. So, I mean, you guys are from Boston. You saw the Celtics series. He was guarding up Garnett, as a rookie from Temple, and he was doing a pretty solid job. He wasn't dominating, but, he was up there holding his own. So Lavoy Allen earned a bunch of respect in Philly. People love the Broad Street bully. People love the fact that he's maybe not as flashy as some of the other guys, but he goes down there like, kind of a lunch pail kind of guy and tears it up, man. Plus he has a nice mid-range jumper too that people don't really recognize. So, he
hit sort of a big one against Boston, if I do remember correctly.
Yeah, I remember that one too.
I tried to forget it, and you still have it.
Going back to the 76ers, I mean, if you look at their offseason, and I think every team in this division has improved. Even Toronto's improved, but they're just not going to make the playoffs. We're actually going to see 4 playoff teams, we think, in the Atlantic this year. And I like that the 76ers addressed their 2 holes that they had. The first hole was inside scoring, which they now have Andrew Bynum, who's a force. He can put 20-20 up if he wants to. That's the key, if he's going to want to. And then they also struggled at, long-distance shooting, and they added guys like Jason Richardson and Jarrell Wright and Nick Young, who, can shoot the ball, like it's their job, because it is their job. Which of those 3 guys that I just named do you think is going to have the best season coming up between Jason Richardson, Jarrell Wright, or Nick Young?
I think Jarrell Wright and Nick Young are going to have the most opportunities. I think Richardson may not play as many minutes as those 2, but, I kind of worry about this a little bit, too. I mean, it looks like, and I appreciate the Sixers brass for going out there and, spending the money to bring in the shooters, to bring around a post player that we can kick it out and hit those open jump shots. But, it kind of feels like we're turning ourselves into the low-rent Magic a little bit, where they had, their number 1 center, and then we're kicking it out and shooting threes with Michael Petrus and stuff. I don't want to turn into that, but I think that, what can you do at this point with one real piece being your center? So they're following the formula, Jarrell Wright, small forward, he can get a shot over anybody. Nick Young, kind of, I guess, lengthy for his size, but long for his size, I should say, can get a shot up over anybody. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for these guys. Jay Rich, rolling in off the bench. They're going to get their shots. If they can knock them down, this team can, put up some big numbers. But, if they go cold, there's no one really on the team, and this is kind of the worrisome part. There's nobody that really can drive to the basket and pick up a foul. I mean, Evan Turner is the only guy. Drew Holiday needs to improve on that because it's going to be a team of jump shooters and Andrew Bynum.
Now, the 76ers are one of the teams that are going to drop $50 million in payroll from one year to the next. There's a lot of players that are expiring, such as Bynum, Nick Young, Jarrell Wright, Royal Ivy. Then you got some guys who are coming into qualifying offers like Drew Holiday. Kwame Brown's got a player option that he's probably going to end up picking up because he doesn't have many options. Which of these players do you see the 76ers going out first and locking up long-term? I should say outside of Andrew Bynum, because that's obviously their main focal point. But outside of Bynum, which player next do you think they need to go out and lock up long-term?
Well, Drew Holiday. No question is that guy. He's the guy with the highest ceiling. I mean, everyone's been saying it for years since he got drafted. He got drafted, he was like 12 years old. I think he's like 14 or 15 now. I mean, the guy's still really young, but they need to lock him up. And I know his deal's coming up. Bynum is a no-brainer, of course, because they've already mentioned it. Owners already mentioned it, and Andrew already said that he kind of wants to stay here as it is. But the core of the team is going to end up being Andrew Bynum, it's going to be Drew Holiday, it's going to be Evan Turner, and you want to see what those three guys can really do together. Thad Young is probably the next best guy, and he may be better than Evan at this point, probably is. But, he's a piece that maybe can move if something came along or someone, presented a good deal.
Yeah, and we have another guy who writes for our site who is a big Lakers fan, and now I'm going to bring Pats and Geno's back into this. And he used to always talk about Andrew and how much he loves his food and how he has to come and get it. And we were wondering if you think Andrew Bynum's going to end up being a Pats or a Geno's guy.
Well, I have to go with Pat, because if I said Geno's, I would feel that he was like, some sort of celebrity-ish sellout. It wouldn't be cool to say Geno's. Not hating on Geno's itself, because it's a fine cheesesteak or whatever, but I wouldn't want the starting center for the basketball team to be a Geno's guy. No one wants that. So, he probably knows better. People who know anything about Andrew Bynum know he's from Jersey, Central Jersey, I guess. So he states that he grew up a Bulls fan because I guess he was a 90s front runner like a lot of kids I grew up with.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he should know better. He knows cheesesteak.
Now, I'm going to quote a famous sports writer over the time, Mr. Bob Ryan, but I'm going to rephrase the quote to apply to this discussion here. And what is the fascination with trading AIs to Denver? This is the second AI they have traded to Denver.
It just happened that way, man. And I kind of feel good. It's good for Iguodala. At least Andre gets a chance to play with a team that can kind of fit his skill set, can run around. We didn't throw him on the Bobcats or anything, which is cool. But, the time had come. The Iverson thing, and I don't know if anyone outside the city can really understand it. I'd have to think of some sort of analogy with another player. But when Iverson left, it was a soul-crushing event for the city. Like, Allen Iverson, for anyone, in their 20s or early 30s in Philadelphia, was your favorite athlete. The dude laid it out on the line every night. And, nationally, he got a lot of bad press because, he liked to drink a lot, had gambling problems, chased his wife around with a gun. Things I don't want to talk about too much. But the guy, yeah, exactly.
Himself, he's a rapper.
He was a rapper with, what was his name? I know he had to came out with, some song, Bar or something. I don't know. But the guy was beloved here. So, Iguodala was not the same thing. If trading Iverson was like getting shot, then, trading Iguodala was like ripping a Band-Aid off.
Yeah, and it seems like AI, he came back during the, later in the season last year. It seemed like he was getting some big ovations coming. Is he going to be the type of guy who starts to hang around Philly, you think, now, and sort of be the guy that comes back and everybody gives the standing O when they're a timeout?
Well, again, this is only one of maybe two or three places where he's really beloved. I guess Virginia, but in Philly, people still love the guy. I actually went to that game, the Game 6 in Philly against the Celtics, when Iverson handed out the game ball. I'm weaving through traffic, almost killing people, trying to make it so I could see Iverson hand the game ball off. And the crowd went nuts. It was the biggest pop of the night, just by seeing, some 6-foot dude in a Sixers jersey and jeans hand over a basketball. You can't really explain that and put into words how fans feel for the guy. So I'd love him to stick around. And plus, AC's right there. I'm sure he'll be in the area.
I will say, though, you're kind of reminding me when I was trying to find the questions when they were re-released by Reebok. I was driving around Boston, cutting people off, hitting Asian people that were crossing the street too slowly, jumping out, running into expressions, and no one has them, and I still can't find a pair. So if you have a pair that's not $600, let me know. Send it my way.
Better check on the internet for that, but I'm sure people are just bumping up the price as it is. They actually re-released, I believe, the original ones. They should check up on that.
That's what I'm talking about. I went crazy for them, looking around. I have friends that work at the headquarters in Reebok, and they couldn't get them. And they clearly didn't make enough. But that's what they do when they do that stuff.
You got to find Iverson on the street and make him bet. I bet you'll give him up.
Hey, what's your relationship with El Prez? Is he like a direct boss? Do you have to answer to him on a daily basis? And how do you communicate? Just via email or by phone?
Mostly via email. Like, he is my direct boss. And I guess one of the funnier things is, he is who he is. I think a lot of people look at him and like, oh, Prez is playing a big character. And
I'm a rock star now.
Yeah. He's huge now. But, he's not trolling people all the time. Like, Prez is kind of a genuine guy. And, I mean, that's who he is as my boss, too. So, like, as much as he'll answer someone with a, 3-word, answer for, like, a book written for him, I'll send him an email detailing everything and get, like, one sentence back. Like, nah, I don't feel like doing that. Like, because that's who the guy is. But, he's hilarious. He's funny in real life. He's kind of like you would expect.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, my last question for you, and I don't know if JJ has any other after this, but
let's wrap it up.
When the Barstool foam party comes, Fucking Foam comes down to Philly, which of these players on this current roster is most likely going to attend?
Oh, man. You know who I'd love to come more than anybody, though? Like, I know I just talked a lot of crap on him, but if Kwame Brown showed up, he would shut that place down.
Yeah, like, that would probably make the greatest Barstool party of all time if Kwame Brown showed up.
Like, if there's pictures of, like, Kwame Brown with, like, girls kissing in front of him and, like, foam on his head, I think, that's going to be the clincher for the site. I'm pretty sure we're going number 1 in Philly after that.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. Well, thank you for joining us, Maurice. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we can have you on again. This was great.
Yeah, I had a good time, and, when the Sixers are in first place, I'll be happy to discuss, why they're in first place later on.
I'm sure there'll be lots of shifting between it because it's a pretty deep division this year.
Yeah, no, maybe for the first couple games, and then that'd be it.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. But everybody, that's Maurice from Barstool, Philly. Make sure you read every city, and I've gotten into the habit myself, is you got to read every single city. You can't just go to your own city and read it. They're all great bloggers outside of Neil. They're all great bloggers. But Neil's getting into his own groove. He's got a couple good posts out there, but you got to read them all because I need to know what's going on in the city of brotherly love, and who better than Mo to tell me what's going on down there. I don't know what's going on down there. So we thank you so much again, Mo, for hopping on, and keep doing what you do best.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Absolutely. Take care, Mo.
All right, peace.
So we're going to put a little dedication song for our outro today for, the closing team here.
Oh, perfect.
So we got a few more minutes here, and I don't think we decided which division we're going to hop over to next. We'll see which writers can go.
Let's go out west and see if we can pick up some guests.
We'll pick up some guests, yeah. And only playoff teams, though. So if your team's on a playoff team, sorry. we're not gonna talk about it. You can't force us to talk about the Golden State Warriors. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe
the Warriors. Well, if there's a division that only has one playoff team,
yeah.
Like think about the
we can get a little deep.
The Southeast Division, the Heat. Orlando's not making it.
No.
Atlanta might not make it.
Nah. They probably will, but not.
Who else in that division?
They're not serious. No, not that deep.
The Wizards?
The Wiz. I don't know. Are they
sending a lot of brain farts out here, but
Wildcats
and Wiz, I think.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's gonna happen.
It's all gonna end up being irrelevant, but
could the Miami Heat win 72 games with that division?
I don't know. I think Ben Canay predicted, who writes for our site, well, doesn't really write for our site, but he's on the other podcast with me.
I don't think he's ever wrote for that.
I think he predicted 60 wins last year in the shortened season.
Yeah, no, I mean, they could do 72. I mean, they really, really could. But, that would wrap it up here for us. We're going to do a
huge Atlantic Division preview.
Huge Atlantic. We got to thank everybody. We apologize that we might have asked any questions that you might not have wanted answered. We apologize, but that's what we like to do. You always ask, and if they say no, they say no.
Like I said, we don't want the drone answers. We want to unleash these people.
We want people to get into their own groove, and for that, this one's going out for Mo. Everybody take care. This is NBA Unplugged.
TheProBasketballTalk.com.